let's go. My name's Mikey. Let's just get names again.
David.
Judy.
So, look, I mean, we have got subjects up on the board, but we don't have to. The great thing about Talkaoke is we don't have to stick with this subject. And I guess what they're looking for is the kind of dark side of genomics. Does it have a dark side? And if so, what is that dark side? Could be a kind of question. So we'll come and have a seat. I'm sorry, I'm doing my best because I know both of you have to go soon, so I'm going to try and accelerate the accretion around the table.
Yes, I mean, theoretically, a theoretical biological weapon could be used that would target specific DNAs in a certain population, and in fact, a defense opportunity would be, I think, available to those that could, properly eradicate that threat. Now, that's sci-fi. We're probably a ways from doing that. But theoretically, you could target, create a disease that would target a certain subset of population.
Sci-fi. What are the more, let's say, clear and present dangers when it comes to biology or this field, genomics? Are there dangers? Do you think it's all positive or mostly positive?
I mean, right now in the controlled environment that we see, I don't see any this knowledge or this science in the wrong hands creating some sort of adverse consequence, at least in present day. But
who knows? What
theoretically, there could be some scenario.
Yeah, it's not something that you seem to be that worried about.
No, there's enough conventional weapons out there, in order to go to some
conventional weapons. Okay, that makes
it's
sense.
easier. I mean, the reality is that human beings go for the path of least resistance whenever they can, and if conventional weapons are nice and easy to get to, they're going to be, pursuing that path.
Have you got a view on this, Judy? Are you worried about any aspects of the science that's coming out?
Well, I want to give it to kids, so you know how kids are. If they have CRISPR and know that they're going to have a flaw from their omics, they might want to go fix it.
Yeah.
So we have to make provisions for stuff like that. In fact, anybody that has a CRISPR shouldn't be. We need to document our species before we start altering the DNA, because there are many other ways to alter the outcomes of having this or that flaw. That's what all medicine does.
What about the potential of DNA for the sake of peace? Could you alter people's DNA so that they were less likely to start a war? Is that too sci-fi for you?
I mean, right now, I think we're quite a ways away from changing personalities. I mean, I mean, the reality is that even physical manifestations are probably multi-gene related. Could be continuous variables rather than concrete variable in order to change. So, in terms of personality, we're a very, very long way away from that kind of thing.
And what about this question that Judy raised about this idea of kids experimenting with things like CRISPR in a kind of almost like a school or a garage context where they're kind of playing with their own DNA? Could that possibly be a danger?
Well, she's definitely right. We need to do a lot of reading before we can do any sort of writing and understanding. I mean, in terms of the consequences of writing, it's so much more than the consequences of reading and understanding. And we have probably just a number of studies in terms of understanding what happens with each change, both as from a direct consequence and an indirect consequence. That we've got quite a ways to go with reading.
In a way, it's at the moment the name of the game is gaining knowledge. In a way, not necessarily containing knowledge. Yeah. Do you agree with that? Is it all about gaining knowledge at this point?
Yeah, and an example of that is we have whole cohorts of mentally ill, and we're not allowed to do research on them.
Yeah.
And it's just it's like a taboo.
Right.
It's protective in a way.
Yeah.
But and I have a family member with major mental illness. One of the big three, schizophrenia. And so I followed him through, the dark ages of mental health care. And first of all, it's an illness. It's we don't even study the pathology of it. And so we need to document the extant population so that we know what we're dealing with, and we can catalog and write our atlases and so on.
Okay, so at the moment it's a bit like drawing the territory rather than, an understanding. As I think you're both in agreement, which is a bit of a shame in a way because it doesn't make for a very explosive debate. But I kind of, I can see where people are coming from, and it does make sense.
I think when you're talking about mental disorder, I mean, again, the power of genomics right now. I mean, these. Well, I think a lot of people think that you're going to find is that you talk about this being a spectrum of different kinds of schizophrenia. You're going to have different kinds of autism. You're going to have different kinds of dementia, and really what you're going to find is that I think on the genome they're going to be, again, continuous. You're not going to see one kind of schizophrenia. You're going to see an infinite amount of schizophrenia. So I think on the genome you're going to find a difficulty in figuring out how to treat that via some sort of writing or genome editing, just because we're so far away from quantitatively finding out what's responsible for that.
Okay, so that's kind of a bit sci-fi as well, in a sense. But could that provide us with any information, not necessarily a treatment, but some information on something? Come and have a seat again. We're talking about, can you off? Give us a couple of, just throw something in, just to help us out here.
If I have enough time.
I mean, we're a little, we're just really talking about the future here. Do you think?
I work on Wall Street. I don't know anything.
Do you think in the future things like mental illness could be treated using an understanding of our genes? Or is that, David's saying that's sci-fi. Judy really wants to see it. Will it happen in your lifetime?
So understanding...
just understanding how the brain works or how mental illness actually works. Is it possible? Do you think it'll ever be possible?
You definitely... Okay. So, I'm in a program, high school program, where we shadow in hospitals around us.
Yep.
So we see a lot of the mental illness, and to be able to understand that in more depth, I think it would be definitely beneficial to society.
Genomics aside, what do you think the answer to understanding mental illness is? Are there things that we're not doing, or research that we could be doing into this? Is it a big problem, do you think? You're saying it's a problem.
It's definitely a problem. And we'll have to do a lot of research, I think.
I think we're all mentally ill, though. I just think that we all have different amounts of mental illness.
Right.
That's why I struggle to figure out if genomics really solves mental illness, or if we'll even be able to write a formula for it. Because I go back to it being a spectrum, and I think I have my own mental ills, and I think other people have ones that society has deemed even, let's say less, allows them less seem what we call normal in a society, and then that's why I'm pretty pessimistic about genomics solving this, at least in the next, I don't know, 20
well, will
years
it at
or
least
so.
give us some more understanding? Because I think we're needing understanding as to, maybe the mental illness is not even the right word to talk about what we're talking about.
Just don't even use those terms because you want to put somebody to sleep, say mental illness. It's illness we're talking about.
Would you agree with David that in a way we all suffer from mental illness?
Yes. We may all have the potential, and you trigger it with our epigenomics, trigger it.
Right.
And I have an example, Humpty Dumpty, and a child before is the egg sitting on the wall. We start with an egg, the child, and we take their genetics. And we don't put them in a precarious place out in a cruel, cold world where they get mistreated by whether it's their parents or society, and they fall and crack, and all of the king's horses right now and all of the king's men are being used to pick up the pieces, which you cannot do once you have a first break into psychosis, and psychosis needs to be treated as though it's a cardiac event. We need to have instead of a stroke code or a stroke protocol, we need a psychosis protocol. It's an ER problem, and that person needs immediate attention because brain damage is happening as we speak, and as that person is psychotic. So you got to help that person and get them help. But it's all illness. It isn't just that one spectrum.
I just want to put this out there. At the moment we're talking about Humpty Dumpty. Did you know there was the connection between Humpty Dumpty and genomics? I didn't until now. But it's this the Humpty Dumpty principle, let's call it. Come 2 minutes. Give us 2 minutes of your time. Do you know about the Humpty Dumpty principle? But I think it's a good principle, and maybe, for all the honest, that's the case that we should be. John, have you got any views on this? Do you agree with the Humpty Dumpty principle?
Yeah, I think it definitely makes sense in the fact that everyone is their own being, their own egg, and I mean a lot of our genes are the same, just like in an egg, but at any little miscalculation in that sequence, it can all fall apart pretty quickly and cause a lot of.
I think there's an idea that we invest resources in a way to preserving the egg rather than fixing all the pieces. But I mean, from a money point of view, because David here is a money man, is that going to work? Could that work, or is it kind of easier to raise money for putting the egg back together again, to use the Humpty Dumpty principle?
The healthcare system isn't really set up for preventative. I mean, right now, I think a lot of us think, a lot of healthcare systems think about things in a 5-year, 7-year perspective, because that's what, their models in terms of payout would look like in terms of treatment paradigm. That's not to say that, we can't work together a society or healthcare systems in order to focus more on preventive. It's just a little bit more challenging for that.
Can you see a business model to make it work?
There are. In a way, a system is a lot smarter than a human being themselves. I mean, human beings themselves smoke and think that I know that cancer happens, but it's not going to happen to me. Healthcare systems are smarter than the individual who says that these diseases don't happen to me specifically. So there is hope in that regard.
Okay, so the system in a way knows more than the individual. How do we get a more prevention-focused approach to all medicines? I guess it's not just medicine. It can be.
You can crowdsource it.
Yeah.
In other words, once people have their own data and they know that they have the potential for a certain illness because they have been given their omic information and it's out there and they're doing research and the person is following, they can actually follow the researcher and donate money to that specific researcher.
But will it be like smoking? Because David mentioned the examples that people know the risks about smoking, yet they still smoke because they say it's not going to happen to me. I'm going to be all right. This is kind of almost illogical.
Yes, there'll be room because it's a democracy. You'll have room for all attitudes.
Yeah.
If there's a drug that's proving by the data that they look at to be successful in 5 cases, and this person has terminal cancer or any other illness, if he wants to try this drug, then he should be allowed to try it without the FDA or anybody else telling them what to do.
But we're more talking about that prevention side before anyone's got the disease. Like it was your idea, Judy, the whole egg, the Humpty Dumpty. Right when someone's got cancer, they're going to try it and risk everything. But before they've got any symptoms at all, are people going to invest in prevention any more than a company wants to invest in prevention, or anyone really? John, all right, thank you, David. Thank you very much. Let me just get a final thought from David. Come down, come and have a seat. Do you know about the Humpty Dumpty principle? Do you know about Humpty Dumpty? Oh, okay. Give us a final thought. These guys are going to come over. What? Come on. Okay, so we've got some. Give me a final thought before you go.
We all love genomics here.
Yeah. Okay. Come and have a seat. We're talking about Humpty Dumpty at the moment. And did you know there was a relevance of Humpty Dumpty when it comes to genomics? Well, there kind of is. So anyway, we've got Judy, we've got John. What's your name?
Amanda.
And
Amani.
And I'm Mikey. At the moment, basically the Humpty Dumpty, because when Humpty Dumpty is a whole egg, it's kind of intact and he's kind of healthy, but as soon as the egg drops off the wall, smashes to pieces, it's almost impossible to put that egg back together again. So the point of that is it's much better to try and invest in procedures and that actually stop Humpty Dumpty from falling, or maybe a crash mat under the wall, something like that, to actually stop Humpty Dumpty from, rather than putting a lot more effort into something that's inevitably going to fail anyway, which is putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. So that's the principle. I don't know if that makes sense, John?
Yeah. So she brought up a good point about that, and if we relate it back to the Humpty Dumpty principle that we just came up with. We talked about earlier about the genomics testing to determine if you're liable for these type of diseases. So say Humpty Dumpty knew that in 5 years he was going to fall from this wall, from a certain thing, from a certain disease. He would be a lot more willing to put money in, or I say money, but whatever he wants to do, into
some
putting
kind
up
of effort anyway.
exactly, putting up safety barriers so that in 5 years he won't fall. So I think that if we could determine if we were liable, it would put it more on a personal scale. Because the people that are creating these systems, like you said, it's not going to happen to me. I'm doing this to fix the pieces of all the people whose lives are already fallen apart. So I think you could put it more on an individual scale.
If you give people the knowledge, then maybe they would act in that way. And they would people get more into prevention rather than cure if they had the knowledge? I guess is another way of putting the question. Any thoughts on that? Are you worried about being a Humpty Dumpty, falling into pieces? Or do you not really think about it? Do you think about what illnesses, diseases you might get?
I don't really think about it on an everyday basis, but it's how I live my life.
some kind of genomics testing and then, like spit into a computer
I feel
and then
like
it turns out some kind of percentage liability of what you might get?
I don't know if I do that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, if something I could do could help someone else,
Yeah.
then I surely would. But I don't know. I feel like I'd be living in fear of like when I'm gonna get something and
Yeah.
when it's gonna happen to me.
So in a sense, you'd rather not know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd be paranoid.
You're disagreeing, but what do you think?
I agree with her. Like, I would submit my data for the benefit of science, but I wouldn't want to know the results of it.
Right.
I'd rather wait.
Yeah. You'd rather just. Yeah. You'd rather not know. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Yep.
So the only thing I'd be worried about that is my parents have been doing a lot of stuff with cybersecurity and going on these websites that promote fear based on it will come back and say, oh, you're prone to being hacked. Pay this to get fixed, and I mean that's skeptical. You get skeptical on that, and that would be you'd be worried about how are people going to use that for your genomics. They're
Sell fear in a way.
You'll be like, okay, I'm going to pay this amount of money to get my genomic code tested, and either way, they're going to say it's all based on money. The system's based on money. They're going to say that you have a certain thing because they want to get the money. I mean, my parent, they went in and made a fake account with absolutely no links to their personal life in any way, and it was a fake account. And they still went back and were like, oh, you're prone to getting your password stolen on these websites are trying to hack you.
So it was just actually an economy of fear in a way.
Yeah,
They're trying to get people.
I mean,
to
you've
be
seen
scared
that in
of the
history
unknown.
too.
Yeah.
Leaders will make the population scared to promote a common or for a common cause, which I think could be used in a beneficial way, but it would have to be correct.
Okay, in a way, it's kind of like the wages of fear. Use fear to sell stuff. Would that also be the case when it came to genomics testing? People would kind of exaggerate the risks in order to get people to invest in their business in there. Maybe it's a good selling point for some of these companies here. Maybe they need to use more fear because that seems to work.
It's knowledge that we lack, knowledge of our own biology. And the more people donate more knowledge and the science works it out, how we can use our own knowledge to prevent illness, to prevent and to become everything that we're capable of becoming, given our identity, which is our omic information.
Both Amanda and Amani both would rather not know because they don't want to have this spectre of what they might get in the future hanging over them.
I can't comprehend that. Look at your own family. What genetic traits do your family have? What did your grandmother die from? What did your,
Or great-grandparents.
do you all look the same? Start studying your own genetics the best you can.
Okay.
Find out where you came from,
So you're an advocate of knowledge.
so you know where you're headed.
In all cases. What do you think about that on this side? Is the fear coming from a lack of knowledge? Could knowledge actually also bring more fear? What do you say to what Julie's saying? You know as much as possible about what you might potentially die from in the future. It's a bit of a morbid subject, but
I think when you first find out, you'll have a sense of fear in people. I mean, I don't know necessarily if I want to know, but if in any way, if by me knowing I could do something in my everyday life that would prevent that in the future, then maybe it'd be worth it. You'd have that overall feeling of acceptance. I mean, when you're in the hospital and someone finds out you only have, 10 weeks to live, obviously those people, because they're not going to feel very good at the first time. But by the end, you always hear the stories that you get a sense of acceptance and you actually end up living your everyday life like it's your last, because it very well could be.
I mean, would that, I guess, that sense of acceptance about, what's eventually going to happen to all of us would come earlier, wouldn't it? And you, I suppose,
People might end up living
living more full life.
a better life.
Okay. What do you say about that? Would it, that sense of kind of, okay, there's a downside to it that you've got this spectre hanging over you that you might die from this or might die from that, but would it give you a sense of living your life more to the full?
You would start trying to stop it.
Yeah.
It's better to start in the beginning.
Yeah. So the sooner you know, in a way, the better.
Lack of knowledge is something you should root out about yourself.
Okay. So in a way, this is quite a philosophical question, isn't it? It's like, is it? Is that your final thought? Thank you, Judy.
Well, I gotta find out about ourselves.
Okay. Find out about the cell and bring it back here when you're done. But thanks very much. Okay. So I mean, where do people want to take this? Are you daunted by this question of knowing of these things? Are you? Do you agree with this statement about knowledge? That it's always better to know than to not know?
I mean, I agree that you should know your family history and like know your past. But I feel like me as a person, if I knew that I might die from something, I would do everything to prevent it. But I feel like if I worked so hard to prevent something like that, it might take away from me actually living my life, kind of.
Yeah. So you'd be too obsessed with it in a way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, like you were saying that you would live every day like it was your last, but I don't know. Well, but there's a difference between living each day like it's your last and then just not thinking about the future. Like I want to be able to plan for the future.
Wouldn't knowing about all these diseases help you in a way?
I don't know. I feel like it would stop you from being able to, because like you were saying, I feel like you'd either become consumed about it or you would.
You might be paralyzed by it. By it or obsessed by it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for have a card if you want.
Sure. Thank you.
Are we supposed to be leaving? So I'm your only guy now.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I think you're doing a good job. Maybe this man behind you's come and give us 2 minutes. What do you mean? Come
here.
Simple questions. Would you want to know if you had some kind of disease that you might be likely to die of? Is it better to live without that knowledge or live with the knowledge? What's that? Come close, I can't hear you from over there. We've got, what's that? Yeah, well, if you sit over there, then no one can see who you are because you're behind the camera. So we've got Jonathan, I'm Mikey. Don't know this guy's name over here, but maybe we can suck him into the debate. Would you want to know, is the question. You say no, you wouldn't want to know. Okay. What's your name? George. Would you want to know? Do you think that and we had a lady, Judy, she's very charismatic, full of ideas. She is saying, knowledge is always better.
Whether you want to know or not, the information is there.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is, whether I know about it or not, nothing's going to change. So why not know? The more information, the better. It doesn't change anything. Because the information is already there.
But it might change your stance and your view of life. It might change. You might get obsessed with the outcome.
I think the kind of person that doesn't mind knowing probably will also not change as much by knowing. So it depends on the person.
So in a way, there may be people that are better off not knowing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's a fact of life that everyone's going to die eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know what it is, but no one sits there and obsesses about when you're going to die. And there might be some people, but you don't sit there and like, you could die in the next hour.
Yeah.
But, I mean, knowing whether or not what disease it could be, I don't think that really changes the outcome, the overall outcome of your life. So if that knowing could help you live a better lifestyle, then I think knowledge is beneficial.
Okay, so I guess you guys are more on the knowledge side, that knowledge is always a good thing. I mean, would you say, for example, you knew that you were, vulnerable to a particular disease, would you then invest money, crowdfund money into actually solve? Come and have a seat.
Okay, good.
Do you know about the Humpty Dumpty principle? That's what we were talking about earlier on. Anyway, so yeah, I've forgotten what question I was going to ask you now. It was something about knowledge and always knowing, and yeah, would you invest in that? Yeah. How's that go? You've got it in there already. Yeah.
Honestly, it doesn't change anything for me.
Yeah.
I can see other people, it depends on the severity of the disease.
Yeah.
Say you have an incurable disorder that you find out about.
Yeah.
I can see people either trying to, they want to maximize their time, they become risk averse, or they take more risks because they know the outcomes. So it can go both ways.
It can have a paradoxical effect in a way. Yeah.
So it definitely depends on the person. So I think that's a personal choice.
When you were doing the 23andMe, did you have a sense of foreboding that something bad might come onto the list?
No, not really.
You just thought, I'll give this a go.
I'll give this a go. This was back in the day when they were doing the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
Certainly did.
You got into storage.
But I'm a geneticist, so
yeah. I mean, as a geneticist, I mean, I've been here all day trying to, and the big question really on the table has been, how do we communicate not just the knowledge, but also the not knowing as well to people that are not geneticists, that are not in the field. And people have come up with some different ideas, but have you got any views on that? How to actually make people understand, get people understanding a bit more?
it's a question of education, I think. That's the same way we're teaching mathematics early in school. I don't think genetics is going to be relegated to university level research anymore.
Yeah.
So people need to be educated at an early stage. And when I say education, I don't just mean the people that are getting the information. I think we need to educate the physicians. We need to educate educators for that matter. So because telling somebody they're at risk for a disorder, what does that actually mean? You're twice at risk for this disorder.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I think one of the things that came up is that somebody on the table earlier on says that people just don't get statistics. So how do you communicate something like risk when people just don't?
No one wants to think about the risk. Look at car crash percentages, or people are afraid of going to swim in the ocean because of shark attacks, but you're more likely to die from coconut falling on your head on the beach than a shark attack. So in that sense, it definitely is hard for people to understand statistics. And for the communication aspect, you definitely see more STEM programs coming up in younger ages. I have a cousin that's a teacher in the Boston public schools, and he's in the 4th grade. They're already teaching you about, some of the aspects that I didn't learn till.
So it is actually happening. There is actually a sense in education.
Yeah, I don't know if it's geared because of this specific thing, but definitely in society you see it geared of higher education to lower age groups.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it's, so in a way you're quite hopeful that people will come and have a seat on the table of chat? This is Talkaoke. We have got George, we've got John. Give us a couple of minutes. I'm Mikey. There's a few things we're talking about. We're talking about the Humpty Dumpty principle. Do you know about that? Come and sit down and I'll tell you about it.
So that's a joke. That's pretty good.
I'll tell you about the Humpty Dumpty principle. If you come and sit down. So basically, what we're talking about is knowledge always a good thing when it comes to genetics? Do the public really understand it? Are they ever going to understand things like statistics? I think I'm talking to the right guy. Come on, have a seat. We've got George, we've got John. Don't make it so hard for me. Just come and sit down. It's not that hard, is it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. But Nancy's going to come and have a seat. So at the moment we're talking about is, are the public ever really going to understand statistics? Is it too much? I think you're hopeful that it's just a question of education, but are we really going to understand the difference between a 1 in 10 chance of getting a disease and a 1 in 100 chance.
I mean, it's just human nature that when you hear a 1 in 10 chance, that one guy isn't going to be you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you think, okay, 1 in 10, I'm in a room full of 10 people, and you're
It's
like,
not going to be me.
you're like, all right, it's not going to be me, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm like kind of the opposite.
Yeah,
Like if
yeah.
someone says 1 to 10, if I'm like,
That's going to be
oh,
me.
maybe it's
Yeah.
me, you know, or the
Yeah.
possibility.
I don't really have good odds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it depends whether you see yourself as a lucky or an unlucky person. What, George, have you got?
Definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, people play the lottery
Yeah.
in terms of life.
Yeah.
One in how many billion chances of winning, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think people with statistics, people understand statistics in different ways.
Yeah.
So people like some people are obsessed with baseball statistics,
Right, right.
And they know the probability that somebody's going to probably hit a home run at some point.
So, I mean, could it be couched in that way that it could be like linked to baseball or something like that? You could sort of say, my problem is I don't know anything about these American sports. And so if you're talking about soccer, then I can understand. I could give you know. But yeah, could you say you've got about as much chance of getting this disease as the Chicago Cubs have got of winning the World Series or something like that?
yeah. I mean, maybe not relating it back to baseball, but more like the education. If you did relate stuff like the genomics, when you talk about genomics to any person, they might be like, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
But if you brought in a statistical aspect from something that someone does understand very well, like baseball or
Shark
football.
attacks. Shark attacks not a good one because people don't, as you say, people vastly exaggerate the dangers of sharks.
So that's the thing. I mean, everyone's different in their fears and what. I mean, fears are going to influence what you think about your statistics or your statistical chance of having that happen. If you're really afraid of sharks, you're going to go into the water and think that 1 in a million person is going to be me that gets bitten by this shark.
So there's a kind of emotional element to the statistics as well.
Yeah, and you can relate that back to genomics testing. If you found out what you had, then you'd be like, if I'm in a room full of people, what are the chances that I get this disease? And your genomics test said you're liable for that disease. You're going to think it's you in that situation.
Okay, so in a way, the people that get tested are the ones that feel themselves to be more lucky and less fearful. It's a bit what people like George. Nancy, would you get yourself tested? I've asked you this question in the earlier session. Would you be scared of the knowledge that you might have some horrible disease lurking in your genetic?
I mean, I feel like I would get tested, and just for like overall peace of mind. If there was like something wrong, I would probably regret it because I would just spend my whole life freaking out about it.
Yeah. So in a way, it's fine if you're like George and nothing too bad, because George has got himself tested in the early days before it kind of got a little bit restricted. I mean, was that how you felt that? Oh, this is a bit of a risk that I might.
Yeah, I'm a little biased because this is what we do for research.
This is your field.
Yeah, so we're advocating everybody getting their genome sequenced, at the time of birth, or even before, because we want to cure disease before it comes, rather than dealing with it after the fact. So, and like I said, the way I said, the information is there. From the time you're born in every single cell.
So the information exists in every one of ourselves. It's just about interpreting that.
So you mentioned the genomic testing. Would you do that just for personal use and tell that one person, okay, you have that chance, or would you put it into a database for other people to study and then you might be able to have a better knowledge of this statistical aspect of having disease as a population instead of just the individual?
In terms of our research, we're kind of approaching it for the individual, actually, the population. To make sense of the individual, you obviously need the population data. Otherwise, you won't be able to do it in perspective.
What do you I mean?
Those variants mean. Now, a lot of things that we're debating is security, right? So the information should never be used for discriminating against people. So, and there are certain laws in place for that I think we can in the future, and those have to be in place for us to
what about those people? Because half the people, when we asked them before, half the people on the table said they're not interested in their own health, but they would do it to give to the world, to give to humanity. They would submit their genetic information.
Absolutely. We have a clinical trial. People come and sign up, and then we sequence them, and they agree that they don't want their data back, and they're going to share it with everybody at the end of the trial. And they're not getting anything out of that. They're sharing the information.
Are they not getting anything out of it?
Well, society is getting something out of that, hopefully, and then in a roundabout way, it will come back to them.
Give us a couple of minutes. Would you, just one question.
I'll get you later.
All right, okay.
So have you actually seen any like after effects of when people do ask for it? Are they surprised? Like, I don't know how one-on-one if you actually are doing the test on the person, but have you had any experience with them, what they think about it? Yeah, or thinking about it, or then asking you like, oh, that doesn't sound good, and trying to find more information and get more educated based on those results?
In terms of returning the data, we don't actually do it directly. The one clinical where we were returning data that had to be done with the genetic counselor and the person's physician, so that they can actually explain to them what that information means. So
what are people's responses when they find? I mean, you may not have direct experience. You must have heard if they found out maybe they've got an increased risk of Alzheimer's or breast cancer. They're two ones that I think we know about, or some other things. What are people's responses?
Some people change their lifestyle. Or get more regular testing if they're at risk for a disease. Now, being at risk for a disease doesn't mean you're going to get the disease, and that's something else that people don't understand.
Being at risk is change based on being at risk of a certain disease can change with lifestyle too. So, say you got the test 20 years ago and then you started smoking. I mean, you're going to get your genes are going to, show a more higher risk of, based on your lifestyle.
Right. Okay.
I mean, so even when you're growing up,
genes plus lifestyle.
Yeah. Even when you're growing up, different cultures are going to be more prone to different diseases.
Why?
Well, the different cultures they have different lifestyles. So and different standards of living based on location. I mean, someone in poverty-stricken country is not going to have the same diet, the same being able to live outdoors, or they're going to have a higher ability to. They might have a strengthened immune system because they are more prone to rare diseases. I mean, you think when someone goes out of the country, they have to have certain more vaccines for that. So.
I mean, will that be almost part of your passport, your genomic information, so that when you go to a different country, you have to submit your profile? You think that would work, or that would happen? Is it a good thing?
It's a different kind of knowledge, right? Medical information, but you're trying to expand it to beyond medical information, right? So some safeguards have to be in place for protecting the individuals.
Well, I mean, when I popped into Boston Airport a couple of days ago, I had to say that I don't have all these diseases. I mean, you didn't go to genetic diseases, but you have to tick
you don't have the diseases, you might have the risk for the diseases, right?
So maybe you have to tick a form in the future, or am I at risk of these diseases on the immigration?
Question is, would you want your insurance to see that form?
Yeah, that's true. Because as soon as they see that you are more prone to these diseases, there go your race. They're just gonna figure, because when we're talking about the statistics, an insurance company is going to look at the statistics a lot different than you are.
They're the one people that actually know statistics quite well. Okay. Nancy, any thoughts on all of this?
I'm just kind of listening right now.
I mean, are you excited or slightly daunted by all of this? I mean,
I don't know. It just seems like really interesting.
Well, you should have heard of when we were talking about modifying people's. We actually started off talking about bioweapons, but then we talked about could you hack people's personalities for the sake of peace? you know, you can actually re-edit their genes to make people more peaceful. So we have less wars and less shootings and less violence.
I mean, you already see people's cars getting hacked.
Yeah.
I mean, that's on a technology-based aspect. But I mean, if we got more into the genome and being able to, you know, splice certain genes and change characteristics, that would open up a whole nother thing. Like, would there be businesses that came up to change your genes after you found out you have this disease that will make you less likely to have it? And then what would be the implications? How would healthcare be affected by that? Because if people could just change their future with the genes, they'd do it before they actually had it and then have to go to hospitals.
Okay, I mean, you're the geneticist, George, so I mean, is that ever going to be possible? Some of these, like, gene hacking sort of things?
I mean, editing, there's been like a few publications where they're editing pre-implantation. There's research done on that. You know, it's a slippery slope once we start going that way. So
are we going to sit down the slope, or are we going to stay at the top of the slope?
I think we need to regulate the level of the slope, or put some barriers somewhere. Because you know, there's certain things that we can definitely say we're improving people's lives by editing, say for a disease, but when we start talking about, you're talking about personalities, I think we're way up in the future with that one. That's a little scary to me. Maybe
couldn't
get
it
a person to smile more, or get them to be more grumpy, and then you have
well, couldn't it solve world peace if people were more placid and less aggressive, especially men? I think it might be. Would that actually solve a lot of the world's, you know, problems when it comes to warfare and violence in the world if we kind of somehow edited that out?
Yeah, I don't know if you'd be able to. By that point, you're like editing just like the basic human characteristics. If that ever happened, I could see people like. I wouldn't want to see it get to the point where people are like, when you're. It's like build your own baby almost. You would not. I think that would be kind of a weird thought. Like you go in, you like register for this, and you're like, oh, I want my baby to be happy, or I want to. But I don't know. I just there's so many things with the human body that can change. I just don't know how. Like how. I mean, you're the geneticist. How are your emotions, like happiness, and how connected is that to your genetic structure?
Will there ever be a kind of genetic understanding of emotions and things like happiness?
I mean, it has to be a combination of the environment, right? It cannot all be in the genes. So the environment plays a significant role in the development of people. And I think maybe if you look at twins that have grown apart in different regions, and you can see that behave differently, and there's been a lot of studies done on twins, right? In terms of psychological studies. So I don't think personality is tied to the genes 100%, and I wouldn't even. I would be scared to put a percentage on that. Actually,
even a little bit. They're a little bit tied, and if you found out about it, could you do anything about it? Like, I mean, we started off talking about mental health. Like, you know, if you could find the gene for depression, would you then try and edit it?
I mean, if it's genetic information, for me, any kind of carefully regulated intervention that can improve people's lives, sure. But we're talking years in the future, with a lot more research to be done, a lot more guidelines to be put in place, a lot more rules, get society ready for something like that. But at the end of the day, you know, I switched fields actually at some point from the physics to genetics to help people. So as far as I'm concerned, genetic research should benefit people's lives. But we have to do it in a well-structured way.
I feel like if it's not careful, and people start like changing genes in order to make people more happy or less violent, I just feel like it could get out of hand easily, or then they'll start changing like their physical appearances to make them look better.
Right,
Try to create some like.
Say you had a child and doctors told you, oh, this child's at risk of depression, but we can at this point it's just an embryo. We can actually edit this gene out. Would you go or edit it out? Or would you?
I mean, definitely. Like, if I wouldn't want my child to have like, a bad quality voice.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like overall, like, the whole idea, people kind of abuse that. Trying to like make their baby, like you're saying, build a baby.
Yeah, build a baby. Yeah. So going back to the like personalities and how you grow up, I'm reading a book right now called The Righteous Mind.
Yeah.
And they talk about how the.
Come and have a seat. We're building our own baby here.
Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah, Humpty Dumpty baby.
So it actually, they did studies and they determined that the culture and how you grow up determines a lot of what you think is good and bad, or your morality.
Right.
They determined that when you're born, well, people were starting to think that people were born good and turned bad, but really people are, from this study, they're born neutral and they're determined, or how they think is determined based on their culture.
Right, okay. So it's not necessarily about good and bad.
I mean, they did studies where they'd ask one culture if they thought this certain scenario, like a very basic scenario, if this was a good or bad thing, and then they'd ask a whole nother culture, and it was really surprising how different the responses were, even just for simple yes and no questions.
So different cultures thought different things were good, and that's maybe where the good and bad thing comes from. We've got some new faces to the table, so we've got Nancy, we've got John, we've got George, I'm Mikey, what's your name?
Julia.
And
Ray.
And
Nate.
Nate. At the moment, we started. George here is a geneticist, and he's actually had his own genome sampled and all of that stuff. But what we're talking about now is this kind of idea of in the future, could you potentially edit out things like depression? If you found out that your baby was at risk from depression, would you actually edit the genome sequence to stop that from happening? But then there's another question that what John has just put in is like actually what we consider to be good and bad, what we consider is maybe it's a cultural thing anyway, maybe it's based on the cultures.
You can never change your personality in the future with how your genetics are as a baby.
Yeah. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Right, well, have you got any views on this? New people to the table, would you, if you found out that your child had some kind of dodgy genes that led to depression, let's say, would you get that edited?
Yeah, I definitely would.
You would?
Yeah, I definitely would.
Yeah.
You just want your child to have the best life it can possibly have, and it has like, say, depression. The quality of life hopefully is great.
Yeah. So you've got this, it's a no-brainer. So okay. Let's go around the table on this one.
I don't know actually.
Okay, well, I'll let you think about it.
Well, it sort of goes both ways, because if you edit the gene, then it's not truly your child.
Right.
Because that's not the child that you if you gave birth to. It's not your true child. But at the same time, like what Ray said, you want the best life for your child, and if you know your child's going to have depression, that might make you depressed at the same time.
Yeah.
But so there's like that both ways sort of thing. But I think I'd do it. I think I would edit it just to make it.
Depression is like a really complex disorder. You don't just get it from genetics. Something can happen in your life that can make you depressed. Just because you edit the gene doesn't mean that your child definitely isn't going to have depression.
So you think it's probably not something that you could edit?
I mean, if I had the option to, I would, to just kind of minimize the chance, but it's not like it's going to completely minimize.
Yeah. Okay, got any faces to the table? What's your name?
I'm Kylie Chris.
Kyle?
Kylie,
sorry. At the moment, we're kind of talking about the future of genetics. Would you, if you had a child, would you edit the child's DNA? We talked about depression. If you knew your child, come bring your pizza on. Come and get involved in this. We've got Kyle, we've got Ray, we've got Julia, that's right, and George, and John, and Nancy, and Ray, and I'm Mikey. What's your name?
Sir, my name is Grant.
Grant. Okay, so we're talking about would you actually edit your child's DNA? I mean, especially in something like depression. And Nancy's saying, well, depression isn't something that is genetically caused, but do people agree with that? Would it be possible, even if it was a bit of a chance?
Yeah, I think if there was a 100% chance that it was only going to change that one aspect of your baby, then why not? But I think I'd be too worried about how this is changing the outcome of their entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, how is this baby going to be different than the one that was originally going to be different? Because who knows? I mean, every choice you make can lead to a different outcome in the future. So maybe them having depression it's a bad thing at the start, but maybe that ended up helping them in some way. It sounds weird, but you'd never know, like with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of successful people have suffered from depression, so maybe there's
any mental. There's scientists that have, mental illnesses that who knows what the child could have made if you didn't take away that factor.
On this side of the table, Kyle, Grant, would you edit your child's DNA if it was possible, if you knew a little bit about it?
Well, I know that it's starting to become possible. People are starting to experiment with it. I work with a company that sequences DNA, so I hear a bunch of ifs and what ifs, and it's a very controversial situation right now. Would I, for certain illnesses, I believe so.
Yeah.
I might.
Give us an example of what way you would edit.
You know, diseases such as autism or something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
But I have an autistic brother.
Yeah.
But though, this is where the other side of me comes into play, saying that I wouldn't because I have an autistic brother. He's wonderful.
Yeah.
And he's perfectly happy. And there are things that are out there to make life very okay and manageable. And I guess when it comes to terminal diseases, maybe. But like he so very accurately said, we just don't know what the side effects could be. We don't know.
Yeah. I mean, also Ray's got this point that is it then your child if you change its genetic
That's
makeup?
also a very good point. Yeah. Is it? I guess it still is, but part of it is somewhat
just
not.
122,000 less, something like that. Okay, Kyle, have you got a view on this?
Personally, I have a cousin who doctors are looking into changing her own genetic sequence because she has they're not sure if she has a growth hormone deficiency or like if it's a problem with the gene itself or if it's just the hormone. And so in that case, like, I'm not sure if I would change my child's DNA just because she has grown up happy and she's a normal child going as it is. She's just short. And so the fact that they're kind of proposing, hey, we should cut out this one piece of the gene just to change her, see if she'll get taller, we can make it more beneficial, but like, what else is going to happen to her? Is she going to completely lose her personality? Is she going to lose who she is because this one gene was changed? And that's a huge thing that we're trying to mold over. We don't know if she should go through this or not.
So you're faced with a very real situation. It's not speculative. It's actually something that's happening. I think, which is interesting itself.
Like you said, with the terminal disease, I think I would definitely go about it. But if your child is perfectly, I mean, there's no such thing as perfect. But if they're fine and living a happy life, why fix something that isn't broken?
What's that? So have you thought about? You've heard other people.
I agree with the terminal illness thing. If your kid is going to have it, then you should change that if you have the opportunity to. But I don't think that depression is one of those things you need to change if they're only at risk for it. So.
I mean, there's a couple of genetic experts on the table. I mean, how certain can we be about these things that if it's a risk factor, how do we know what the risk factor is? Will we ever kind of be 100% certain or be able to kind of predict anything from this?
I don't think that there's going to be, within the near future, 100% certainty of what can happen as a result. I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error, and that's the danger where we are at now. The trial and error was
okay, so in a way we have to experiment on people to find out. Do we? Yeah.
That's what makes it such a controversial topic, because no one wants to be the error in a trial.
Yeah.
But so.
Okay. Where do we go from here? Where do we want to take this? We've got a lot of people around the table now. Where do you want to take this conversation to? Is it okay? We've discovered that editing children's genes is a bit of a minefield. You know, there's a future of possibilities. Is it being hyped maybe too much? Because it seems like the people that are in the know are very much dampening down the possibilities. Do we need that hype as well for you guys to kind of like make it more exciting what you're doing? Or, how do you feel about it? Do you think there's too much hype about all of this?
You know, I come across a bunch of articles about it every day. Part of my job is to kind of, I'm in the marketing field for our companies, and I come across a bunch of articles about this and the hype. And as of now, apparently, 58% of America is roughly around they're for editing genes in all aspects to make the perfect your baby's perfect.
So 58% of Americans would go for it.
Apparently, according to the article that I read. So I guess there's a lot of hype already. It doesn't need to be hyped up anymore. I guess we just need to.
Do you think the public now have got too much expectations about, they don't know about the uncertainty?
I think most of the people who are for it are not really aware of what could happen.
Yeah, they only see the positive side of it, the higher picture.
I don't know. I feel like I could just kind of smart and that has no longer it's as bad as that is, that it makes people have to
how many things that have been accomplished are based on the fear and pain of something that could happen in the future. So we're going to research this certain topic, we're going to implement this certain medical procedure to do this, and if everyone was perfect, then what would human society turn into?
Okay. Would it be a better world if people, not everyone was perfect, but people were just a little bit closer to perfect? Would that help? Is there like an optimum amount of pain and suffering to have?
I guess I'm going to have to ask you, what's your definition of perfect?
Well, I'm just a man in the middle. I don't really do definitions. I can ask it out to everyone else. What is people's definition of a perfect world? I guess you talked about the perfect world.
Who would be the one to say what is the perfect world? Because every single person is going to have a different view on what they think is perfect, and that goes back to the morality. It's all based on your culture, so even a single family can have a different idea of what it could be. So, and that would open up a whole nother idea of, what are you supposed to, what laws are going to be implemented to regulate this kind of thing.
If some cultures think that editing is good and some think it's bad, in the same country, can you have a law about it? If, say, one culture is considered the worst wrong, and other cultures think that it would be wrong not to do it, how can you make a law about it? How can you actually? You were talking about you thought there should be more legislation, but is it? How easy is that going to be?
It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
I think there will be a lot of discussions about it.
Yeah.
And the discussions have to be both from the scientists, but also from the lawmakers, from the physicians, but from the regular people involved. So, but it's not a conversation that can be had on a small table with 10 people.
Well, we're starting it here. We're kick-starting it, and then it will grow to all these 58% of Americans that know about it and basically think it's a good idea. I don't know, what do people think? Should there be laws about this kind of stuff? Should it be up to the individual to decide how much they want to edit? That goes to everyone. I'm looking at you, Ray, but it goes to anyone.
So as far as like laws go on it, I think in a way there should be kind of an age restriction, because how is someone supposed to deem what's going to make their child happy? As far as like the gene sequencing goes and changing out the genes, and what if that person was going to be totally fine with how they were, and then you just ruin something as their parent and change something about themselves that they would never have found out? And it's just, I feel like you're taking a part away from them that they're not going to be able to experience, and so I feel there should be some legislation on the age, because a person should be able to decide for themselves, do I want to change this?
I mean, I can see a problem with that idea of waiting until someone's 18 before editing their DNA.
I mean, like, how many things do you see in society where their parents don't agree with something your child is doing, either a personality trait or something that's going to start taking away from diversity in the human population, and then all things, it's bad. I mean, you see certain minor or smaller societies that have like dedicated their life to being similar, and you never see them continue on because diversity is key in just in the human population to keep it thriving.
What about this question, George, of should we leave all genetic editing to adults, no minors? Would that work as a way of doing?
I think we're way far before anything like this. We're more than possible. The other thing that we're talking about now is early stage. We're talking the experiment on how to treatmentation.
So it's like what are the
DNA, right? If you're editing the DNA, you have to edit the DNA in every single cell. You're going to alter it.
So that's easier to do with an embryo of like 5 cells as regular.
Like what we're talking about is on like an entire human genome, like the whole scale. Like what is the possibility?
So
I know what so
going back to your point,
Curly,
that we can't actually you can't edit by the time they've got 14 years.
It's already too late. You'd have to do it. But then, I mean, we haven't even determined which every little site, even just an embryo, is going to, what that develops into the future. I mean, I know there's certain experiments that we've done that on like a frog or whatever, and you can see by changing this, it changes that on the human or on the frog. So how would you grow another leg or something if you change this? You couldn't do it. I don't think it would be ethical to do that kind of testing on a human. Like, what if I change this? Are they going to grow another leg or something? You don't want to do that kind of trial and error, because then the public would not support you in that.
Okay, so in no circumstances.
I mean,
if they had a terminal disease, we talked about earlier.
The thing is we don't even know what site causes that terminal disease.
So we don't know enough about it. So right now,
I mean, you could add on that. I mean, how accurate is that statement? That like we don't really know.
I mean, we can also go to Grant as well, as another expert in the field. Welcome to Talkaoke Pop-Up Talk Show. At the moment, we're talking about the law and the ethics. Would you edit your own child if you knew your child had a terminal disease? Would you actually edit the embryo? That's what we're talking about. Some people, apparently 58% of Americans say yes. But is it actually possible? Do we know enough to be able to even contemplate or comprehend this?
From what I understand, there are some cancers and other terminal diseases that can be located and sequenced. And I just know from the machines that we have, our analysis tools are able to pinpoint, hey, this is a red flag. You might be developing this cancer later on in life. Different variations.
I mean, if you found that in an embryo, could you cut it out?
I don't know that.
Would it be ethical?
Would it be ethical? You know, I couldn't tell.
How specific can you get into cutting just one certain disease out of? One site that we can cut off now can cut off a couple other, maybe even thousands of different characteristics. Minor, but they could be.
You can be very specific and very accurate to the base pair. So
you can just remove one base pair out of the whole.
You can cut out exactly where you want to cut out. So you have the exact location, and then you can also like filter and figure out which are successes and which are not, and decide that one is successful and not successful. What we don't know is we don't know the function of every possible location of the genome. So we have incomplete knowledge for a lot of the genome. We have very complete knowledge of certain parts of the genome. So until we have complete information, we cannot just indiscriminately edit out.
Is there individual base pairs that could affect, like terminal disease? If you cut that out,
let's get something. Sorry, John, to interrupt. Let's get some final thoughts, guys, before we go. But finish your question.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you cut out a certain section of it, how much does those base pairs affect the outcome of other characteristics, or is that one base pair? Like, is there a base pair in your body? Like,
I see what you're saying. You're kind of like, does that do other stuff as well that we don't know about yet? And what's the chances of that? We're going to park that question for a second. We'll just get some final thoughts. Nancy, give us a final thought. It's just a final thought. What are you going away thinking? Are you thinking, oh, this is all too complex and futuristic? Are you thinking we need to make some tough decisions in the future? Or what are you thinking?
Yeah, we do have to make lots of decisions. We can't just jump into it.
Do you think the public's ready to take on this debate? I mean, who's going to make these decisions?
I don't know. I mean, like, you just have like the researchers that actually know like about science and everything. You know, a lot of people don't really know about genomics. So I don't know how them having a say. Probably like for the ethical part of it, like wanting to change their baby's DNA or their own.
So it's maybe about individuals having the say. Where does that stand within a wider law? Give us a final thought.
We need to really assess the issues that could come along with it. And I think that's
it's part of the research, and we don't really know enough. I think everyone's agreed on that. Final thought.
I agree with that statement. I think we definitely need to see, way that sort of checks and balances of everything.
Nate, give us a final thought.
If we go through with this, it's going to cost a lot of money, so you just got to make sure you know what you're doing. That's my thought.
Mate, but I don't think we do know what we're doing. I think that's the problem.
I'm with them.
You say, make sure, give us a final thought.
All right, so
thanks for contributing so much as well for this.
A common theme has been, this is going to be really far in the future, but you look back 10, 15 years and you think that the things that we have today, people, they really have, they had no idea where we'd be today. So we have no idea where we're going to be in 15 to 20 years in this. And it's just the very beginning stages of this, but I think it's a really promising field in the future.
But I mean, how do we tread in terms of laws and stuff when we don't really know what we're doing? And that's part of it. It's part of it.
We never will. I mean, we never know what we're doing. And it goes along. And you see that in pretty much all aspects of society. So you just got to go along with it, and you tackle the problem as you go. And sometimes you tackle it correctly, and sometimes you don't tackle it so correctly. But I think that will be a prominent issue in the future with genomics.
Thank you, John. All right, it looks like this. Now we've lost all the young people. It looks like this session looks to be on its way out. Unless you want to come and join in and give us a final thought at least. We're doing final thoughts at the moment. As goes to anyone looking. Grant,
as well. But final thought, it's an interesting topic for discussion.
I mean, what I think I've discovered is science is all about not knowing what you're doing.
Exactly, but the thing is, how got to figure out the correct way to go about testing for this, figuring out what we need to figure out for this. Sure, it has the potential to solve some major problems and help people live healthier lives, but we just don't know enough. I think we need to figure out the facts and then go from there.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. Thank you. Tom?
I completely agree. I think, and the good thing is we're doing this early. So, you know, we need transparency in the research, and we need to talk about it rather than just say we'll deal with it later. So we're tackling it head on now.
So in a way, we don't necessarily need to come up with the legislation now, but we need to come up with the debate and pose the problems at this stage.
We need to debate and definitely think about the legislation, if not come up with it fairly quickly.
Okay, fantastic. That's a good final thought. Thanks everyone for taking part in Talkaoke. We'll be back later. I'm here all day and all day tomorrow. This has been Talkaoke. It's been a very good session. We didn't really deal with are bioweapons and genome hacking a real threat? But we dealt with a lot of other threats instead.